today. Thank you for joining us. This is the Purebred Mini Jersey Society. I'm sharing a class with you on body condition scoring of your dairy cattle. So we've got several different topics we're going to be covering, but specifically I wanted to make sure just in the beginning to introduce Purebred Mini Jersey Society as a registry, but also so much more than that, because we have educational opportunities like this one that you're participating in today, or that you're viewing through our YouTube channel. We've got a Facebook group. We've got a Facebook page. We've also got some social media over at Instagram. If you haven't already, we invite you to come visit our website, purebredminijerseys.org. And yes, we are a .org because we have applied for nonprofit status. And I think we're the only mini Jersey registry that has done so, which is honestly the proper way that we should be serving you. So we're really happy to be able to bring that to you. It will open up some resources for us as well as for you, our members. Speaking of members, Sarah Burton is presenting today. She's the owner of Sabbaticus Farm in Tennessee. She's started with cattle just recently, actually, just a couple of years ago, but she very rapidly ramped that up and is now offering a herd share with 5 cows and providing raw milk to her community. She's really passionate about cattle, as we all are, which is why we're here, right? And she also serves us on our board of directors as our community outreach director. So if you happen to be near Tennessee and you're watching this before the first or second weekend, it's the 6th and 7th, I believe, of June in Tennessee, she'll be representing PMJS at a booth for the Homestead Festival. So if you're in attendance, go say hi to Sarah. I think Ashley is on as well today, and she'll also be at the booth this summer. That's the summer of 2024. So Sarah, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lorinda. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share what I know about body condition scoring and how we can apply that in a meaningful way with our cattle. So why do we use body condition scoring? That's a question that you might be thinking about and really not sure what purpose it serves. To start off, body condition influences the productivity, reproductive health, and longevity of our dairy cattle. It is extremely important to be able to objectively assess our animals and decide whether or not they're healthy or not. I like to put it into these terms. As far as energy stores go, you can think about it like nutrient supplies, meaning the nutrients that we are providing our cattle, whether that be pasture or supplementation or their minerals or whatever they get in the stanchion. If you minus that from their nutrient requirements, so how much your cow actually needs to do well and be well, those two things equal your available energy stores. And what you're seeing when you do body condition scoring is a snapshot of their available energy scores. That will tell you a couple of different things. The first one is that it's an indicator of health. It's going to correlate to easier breeding, whether that be with artificial insemination or with the bull. It's going to correlate to their milk production, as well as things like the components in their milk, whether or not you want a lot of cream versus a lot of milk, as well as their longevity. That cow may be healthy and well for you into their teens if you do a really good job of making sure that their nutrient requirements are met and that their available energy stores are accessible. Body condition scoring is a good way to look at your success as a herd manager, or even just a cow manager if you've only got one cow. It's very hard to measure short-term success. So if you go feed your cow one good meal, you're not going to go out there the next day and be able to evaluate and say, yep, that did it all. She's looking better today. It just doesn't work like that. You need a measurement of overall health success as a herd manager. And that's what BCS does for you. It gives you something to say, we've been doing pretty good these past few months, despite the fact that she just had a calf, despite the fact that we, have been milking and she's been doing great with production. If her body tells you that she's doing well, great, you don't need to make changes. If her body tells you that there's something that's missing, well, then we can go ahead and make those changes. The purpose of this is so that you can develop an eye for a healthy cow or a bull and use that to your advantage as you build your herd, as you move forward as a cattle owner. So we're going to switch over to watching this video on exactly how to do body condition scoring.
The following is a step-by-step guide to help you learn to assign body condition scores for dairy cows based on the process described by Ferguson and co-workers in 1994. Scorers using this method will be able to assign body condition scores consistently and accurately. This system will teach you to evaluate specific areas of the pelvis and loin in an orderly fashion. Scores range from 1 to 5 in increments of 0.25. The amount of body fat increases as you move up the scale from 1 to 5. This system concentrates on accurately assigning scores from 2.5 to 4.0. Scores outside of this range are extreme and indicate serious problems. For example, the difference between a 4.75 and a 5.0 is insignificant. Both cows are seriously overconditioned and prone to the same metabolic problems. We would not base management decisions on the differences between these scores. The same is probably true of two cows scoring 1.5 and 1.75. Both are seriously underconditioned. Even with a structured system such as this, some cows will fall between the categories described. In this case, you must use your judgment to decide which score best fits each cow. As you assign scores, it may be helpful to continue one step past the score you think the cow should receive. This allows you a second opportunity to consider her final body condition score. Before we learn the scoring process, let's review the anatomical areas that are evaluated when assigning body condition scores. For dairy cows, we focus on the pelvic area and the loin. When viewed from the side, we will evaluate the visibility of the hooks, the pins, the thurl, and the short ribs. From the rear of the cow, we again evaluate the hooks, the pins, the thurl, and the short ribs, and we consider the sacral and tailhead ligaments. The first decision you make will divide cows into two groups: those with a body condition score less than or equal to 3, and those with a score greater than 3. From the side view, we evaluate the angle between the hooks and pins using the thurl as a reference point. If the angle between the hooks and pins forms a V, the cow will have a body condition score of 3 or less. On the other hand, if the angle forms a U, the cow's body condition score will be more than 3. This decision may be the most difficult one in the body condition scoring process, especially if the cow is near a score of 3.0 or 3.25. If the difference between a U and a V is not clear, move to the rear of the cow and observe the same angle between the hooks and pins. It may also help to evaluate the angularity of the hooks and pins. This cow has a V angle between the hooks and pins, and the bones are clearly sharp and angular. This kind of cow will score 3 or less. This cow has a U angle between the hooks and pins, and the bones are smooth and round, clearly covered in fat. This cow will score above 3. Since this first decision can be a little difficult, here are a few more examples. I will show the cow, pause to give you time to decide, and then trace the angle and provide the answer for each example. This angle is a V. Another V angle. This cow has a little more condition and a U angle. That's right, a V. Again, a V. The angle here is a U. How about one more? Again, a U. Hopefully, you're now a little more comfortable with the first step of this process. Now, we'll work through the steps for each group of cows. We'll start with a thinner group and refine your score of 3 or less. From the back of the cow, take a close look at the hip bones or hooks. Are they round or angular? If the hooks are rounded, the cow receives a body condition score of 3.0. If the hooks are angular, the cow will receive a body condition score of 2.75 or less, and we will move on to the next step. But first, this is a good place to make sure you are headed down the right path. If the decisions based on the hooks don't seem to fit the cow you're scoring, try going through the steps for the cows with a U angle between the hooks and pins. We'll get to those a little later in this presentation. Before the checkpoint, we had determined that the cow would score 2.75 or less. Now, we'll refine that score by evaluating the pins. Are they padded or angular? If you can look at the pins and see that they have visible padding, the cow will get a body condition score of 2.75. If you don't see fat on the pins, the cow will score below 2.75. Now, let's refine that score of less than 2.75 by evaluating the pins more closely. Can you feel a fat pad on the point of the pins? If you can feel a fat pad on the point of the pins, the cow will score 2.5. If you cannot feel a fat pad, the cow will score less than 2.5. The final decision to refine your score of less than 2.5 requires a close look at the short ribs and spine. Looking at the rear or top view of the cow, find the bony ridges of the short ribs and estimate the distance that these ridges are easily seen from the tip of the short ribs to the spine. Are the ridges visible half the distance, 3/4 of the distance, or more? If the ridges of the short ribs can be seen about half the distance to the spine, the cow's score is 2.25. If the ridges can be seen about 3/4 of the distance to the spine, the cow will score 2.0. If the ridges of the short ribs can be seen more than 3/4 of the distance to the spine, and the cow has a sawtooth appearance to her spine and prominent ribs, she will score below 2.0. We can stop scoring at this point because cows scored below 2.0 are severely thin and would be managed similarly regardless of their exact body condition score. Now, let's go back to that first decision where we separated cows based on the angle between their hooks and pins and work at refining scores greater than 3. To do this, we start by evaluating the tailhead and sacral ligaments. The tailhead ligament is found between the tailhead and the pins. The sacral ligament is found between the spine and the hooks. The visibility of these ligaments will help you score cows with more condition. If both the sacral and the tailhead ligament are visible, the cow will score 3.25. If the sacral ligament is visible, but the tailhead ligament is partly covered in fat, the cow receives a score of 3.5. With additional fat cover, the sacral ligament becomes less visible, and the tailhead ligament is completely obscured by fat. A cow like this scores 3.75. If neither ligament is visible, the cow will score 4.0 or more. If you can clearly see the ligaments described here, you may have assigned the cow to the wrong group at step 1. Try going through the steps for cows with a V angle between the hooks and pins that were discussed earlier in this presentation. When we left off, we had a cow with a score of over 4. Let's refine that by evaluating the thurl, short ribs, pins, and hooks. The score will increase as more of these parts are covered with fat. The area between the hooks and pins is the first of these landmarks to fill in with fat. So in all cows with a score over 4, the thurl area appears flat. Short ribs get covered next. If you can see the tips of individual bones in the short ribs, The cow gets a score of 4.0. If the tips of individual bones in the short ribs are just barely visible, the body condition score is 4.25. As fat continues to accumulate, the tips of the short ribs can no longer be seen as individual bones, and the pins are no longer visible. Such a cow scores 4.5. When the bones of the hooks become barely visible, the body condition score is 4.75. The highest score of 5.0 is assigned to cows that have a generous covering of fat on all the bones we've discussed. These cows are well-rounded. And that's it. You've now learned to score the body condition of dairy cows and are ready to put this scoring method into practice. Thanks for watching.
Great, thank you, Miranda, for sharing that. Let me pop back over here. Okay, everyone see the screen okay?
Yes, we're good. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, let's move forward. So there's a lot to take in that video, but I want to have a little bit of a discussion about basically how can we take this information and implement it for ourselves. The first implementation off the top of my head would be in starting your herd. If you are going out there and buying new cattle and evaluating your existing cattle, it's a good idea to make sure that you're not, buying a cow that appears to be in good condition, but once you have these objective measures, you can really put a critical eye on an animal and say, this is the snapshot of this cow's past, 3 to 6 months. And if I'm seeing something that's concerning, maybe I don't want to bring that cow home, as opposed to just like, well, she looks great, and moving forward with that. It also helps to create a nutrition plan for your cow based on her energy needs. You might think you have a good nutrition plan in place, but after evaluating, it looks like she's a little thin, or vice versa. There are cows out there that stay fat on grass. This is a picture of my cow, Ruth. She came to us very thin, and we really did nothing to help her out except provide her with a nice stand of tall grass. And you can see here, I think she's in pretty good condition in this picture. She bounced back very quickly with really no supplementation except for grass. So I have to be careful with her because she will get a little bit heavier if she gets into anything extra like alfalfa or pea protein, stuff like that. And then it's a good idea to take your body condition score to the reproductive stage at regular intervals and when we encounter problems. So that applies to, where is this cow at as far as the reproductive cycle goes? If she's in milk, what should her body condition score be? If she's having issues with getting pregnant again, well, let's take a look at what's going on, and on a global scale with how we're treating her. That can help avoid problems like milk production, low milk production, I should say, infertility, and then recurrent health issues. Here are some resources that are really good references for you. The first one is a tool for just dairy herd management. I love this article. It gives a really good breakdown of the 5-point scale and how to score. The second one is examples of cows in various body conditions. So you can use those photos to kind of help hone your eye in, as well as practice a little bit more for yourself and get yourself really dialed in with how to adequately score an animal. And then what you're wanting to do then is gain experience with body condition scoring. So if you practice with it, it can be something you develop over the lifetime of owning your cattle. A few tips that you can use. So first one, view as many dairy cattle as you can of different breeds in different stages of lactation, different ages, during different seasons of the year. All of these external factors will influence the condition of your cattle. And it can change and vary from my farm to your farm. Maybe they're in the exact same stage of lactation, exact same ages, exact same season of the year, but my cow might look vastly different from your cow, just depending on the genetics that she's got, what's being fed, that kind of thing. The second tip is you want to aim for target body condition scores during specific stages of life. So when she's in a period of higher demand, like when a cow has calved and they're peaking in their milk production around that 6 to 8 week mark, it might make sense to make a nutrition adjustment. And it's okay to make those nutrition adjustments as often as you need to. That's something I had to learn as a new cattle owner, that just because what we were doing had worked at some point, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to continue to work, and that we might need to make minute adjustments all throughout the year. And we definitely do that. And then the third tip, don't forget about your bulls. A lot of this pertains to the cows because of how much demand we place on them, the milk production, the calving every year, or however often you want to do it. But your bulls are also going to be doing a big job for you if you have a larger herd of cows. Even if you don't have a large herd of cows, it's a good idea just to make sure you put a critical eye on them. If they're in a period where they don't have a lot of demand on their bodies, they're not breeding a lot of cows, but they're looking a little poorly, there's something probably going on with that bull. And it might mean that you need to support his calories and his growing physique. But it also might be that genetically, he's just not the kind of bull that you want to keep bringing forward if he's fluctuating. Vice versa, if he's getting bigger on grass like my girl, again, that's something to consider when you're thinking about incorporating genetics into your herd. This is a great graphic. This is all over the internet. It's pretty easy to find. What it is basically is a quick and easy body condition scoring guide, and it makes it, I have actually taken this one, printed it out, cut it out, and put it up against the rear of my cow, kind of like standing back, and tried to compare where does my girl land on this table here. Super handy. Okay, so these cows, we're talking about under conditioning right here. And we're going to ask for some participation with this. What score would you give these cows? We're looking at the thurl angle. Is it a V or a U? The hook angle, are they sharp or rounded? Pins, is there a round fat pad or none? The short ribs, is there a visible distance to the spine? I'll take a whack at this first calf on the top, first cow on the top left. As far as her thurl angle, the sunshine there is making it a bit difficult, but just based off of what I can see, it's definitely a V shape. Her hook angle is fairly sharp. The shadow that's being cast there is not a gradual shadow, it's a pretty severe shadow there. So I know that that's a sharp angle. Her pins are definitely prominent, and there's a sharp angle there. In fact, you can see like her vulva is sticking out past it, so there's not a whole lot of extra there. Her short ribs, I can't quite tell if they go all the way to her spine, but they look like they come pretty close. So I would probably score this cow a 2, but I would say 2, but she's less than that for sure. And since we treat them the same, whether or not they're a 2 or below, we're going to say she's at best a 2, but probably worse than that. Probably more like a 1.5, 1.25. That would be my guess. Does anybody want to take a look at this cow down in the bottom right-hand corner?
I think once again, the sun is kind of throwing it off. It almost looks like a U, but the pins and the hooks are telling me that there's not enough fat there. So she's going to be under and not over. So we're going to use a V.
Right. You can see the V right here. It's like a check mark.
Yeah.
Definitely. And again, the hook angle is difficult to discern here, but I think you can see there's a peak right there on it, which would indicate this. It's a pretty sharp angle. Her pins, again, another really sharp angle, not a lot of fat pad there at all, if any. Short ribs, they look like they go about 3/4 of the way, and you can almost see a little tiny bit of the sawtoothing at the top here. So again, a very underconditioned cow. These cows, this next slide, these cows are in ideal condition. They are lactating, so you can see both of them have a full udder on them. That's something to keep into consideration when you're evaluating that their energy needs are going to be a little bit higher. The cow on the right-hand side is my cow. I had dried her off in December for an April calving, and I know that's a lot longer than most people do it, but in December, I did do a body condition score on her, and she was just too thin, and I didn't feel comfortable continuing to milk her. So this is about 2 weeks after she calved, and she looks, in my opinion, probably the best she's ever looked. She looks really good here, and I was very happy to see her with a good amount of weight on her going into calving, and then post-calving, she did lose a little bit of weight, but again, because we'd taken some time to build her up, she did really well through that peak of lactation. And then on these girls, you can see it's mostly a U shape here. We don't have a sharp angle. There's a nice rounded fat pad in the back. And then the short ribs, you can see them, they're visible there, but they don't extend all the way up into the spine. Both of them have pretty decent condition. Does anybody want to take a whack at a score on these girls? There are no wrong answers as well. You feel comfortable to go ahead and throw a number out there.
I think the cow on the left is pretty close to having a U and not a V.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably score her at 3.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
3 1/4.
Yeah, I would agree. I think she looks great. Okay. And over conditioning. These girls are chunky. So you can see, as far as thorough angle goes, let's work with this cow in the middle. There's not much of an angle there, honestly. I can see hooks here, a little bit of a bony prominence there, but not much. So that's kind of buried in there. The hook angle, again, hard to see, but I think it's rounded. Pins are quite rounded on this girl, and her short ribs, there's really like no extension to the spine that you can see from this angle. Same thing with her. You can see the short ribs have actually a rounded appearance, so she's storing fat there. If you were to do that equation that I came up with, the nutrition supplied minus the nutrition requirements equals the available energy stores, these girls have a lot of energy stores on their body, which sounds like it's probably a good thing. It's actually not. Overconditioning in your cattle can be just as bad for your cattle's health as being underweight. These girls will have difficulty breeding back. A lot of cows store fat around their ovaries, and that excess fat makes it more difficult for them to get bred back. All right. So, and then we can move forward. All right, so we'll do a little bit of testing here. These are not in order of the numbers you see here. This is more of just a visual reminder for what the scoring scale is going to be. This is a 4-month bred cow. She is 4 years old. So on her, we can take a look at her pins to hooks. I see a nice U there, and I don't think anybody would disagree. Looking from the hind end, you can see a really nice round fat pad. So I would probably score this cow maybe a 3.25. Anybody else want to try one?
Come on, you guys, don't be shy.
I can tell you right now, there's an easy one you can try right here.
All right, I'm going to call them out. Ashley, can you unmute and tell us what score you give cow number 4? Not sure if she's got the ability to. She's still on? All right. Okay, let's see. How about Sarah Mosetic? You want to give us a try at number 4?
So this is harder than I thought it was going to be just looking at pictures.
Right?
I think I do a lot of like looking and touching when I'm looking at our cows.
Yeah.
Okay, so to me for number 4, like especially from the looking from behind by her tail, there's not like she's kind of flat, so I think she's definitely above 3 because of that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely does. I don't know, like I can't really tell so much about the short ribs in that picture. I don't know what do you think you would say, like maybe a 3.25 to 3.5?
I would guess at least a 3.5 because she's so rounded at her hips.
Mm-hmm. I'm seeing a loss of ligament here, like we don't see it here, and then this ligament right here is just like not visible. Mind you, she's a little furry and looks like she's probably in a winter coat, but you know, versus this cow, the ligaments are definitely visible. These are buried, so 3.5 at the very least.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Gigi,
then
you
you can
want to
also
jump in on one of these?
I'm here. I'm just thinking about we were watching my cows today. They're supposed to have been coming into heat yesterday or today, and of course they're just laying out there. And I'm looking at all these pictures, going, "Okay, mine are just fat." So I'm just kind of sitting back and seeing what you guys have to say on these, because this is still.
What would you score number 2? Gigi, what do you think of number 2?
I would say under a 3, maybe around a 3.
So I'm seeing a lot of fat pad in front of her pin bone.
Okay.
And we don't see the short ribs at all.
Okay.
She has, you can compare the two. If you take a look at, okay, we'll take a, like this probably a 1.25 at best. These ribs here, you can see them from the top, and
Right.
how you see how this kind of like concavity happens here.
Yep.
This cow has nothing concave there at all. She's full all the way through, from her hooks to her pins. There is no U, there's no V. It's dip. In fact, it's actually instead of being kind of concave, it's the opposite. She's convex and she's kind of fluffy there. She's got that big old fat pad right there. Her ligament here is completely non-visible. It almost looks like there's not even a divot there, whereas like this cow, you'll see a little divot right here. This one's kind of flat across the back. And so that ligament is just completely buried under a pad of fat. She's also very round in the hip right here and right there. She's a fluffier girl. I would lean on this side, I would lean more towards maybe a 4.5.
Okay. I guess maybe I'm not understanding the whole scoring thing then, with all the different parts and how they add up together. And
yeah,
I guess I missed some part of that.
That's okay. That's why we're talking it through with these examples.
Yeah. And it's super subjective too. You know, my score on a cow is influenced by a lot of things, you know, like what's out in my pasture right now. It's influenced by that. And it's probably the opposite for Lorinda. Her cows tend to run a little bit heavier. So she's going to be skewed one way and I'm going to be skewed the other. But what you can do with the body condition scoring is just get a baseline for what anatomical parts you want to look at, and then make your judgment based off of those. So, and definitely nobody's going to be proficient the very first time they're trying it. So I don't pretend to be an expert myself. It's still something that I'm very much trying to learn and experiment with. So, okay. Well, Thank you all for being here. This has been a wonderful educational opportunity, and thank you for letting me be your speaker tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for presenting today, Sarah. We really appreciate your time and your knowledge. And thank you everyone for being here. This video will be saved to our YouTube channel, so you can watch it again there. And you can look at those pictures again and practice on those last 5 and see what you think.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.